was just reminiscing and realized, damn, been ages since we last saw each other. You know me, got a hard time staying put. Though, Regis says I'm getting old. Drops in with herbs for trysts sometimes. Strange species I've never seen. They grab Yennefer, lock themselves in her lab, spend all day brewing. Wouldn't dare interrupt them. Not that I'm complaining. Gives me time to help the guys with their contracts. Although, can't shake the feeling they mainly take jobs nearby. Lambert practically lives here. As I said, find it hard to sit still. Except, things are good here, you know? I'm good. We play Gwent, drink wine, swipe grapes from Anarietta's vineyards the odd moonlit night. Vesemir'd enjoy that especially. Been through hell and high water, you and me. Fact is, you know me better than anyone else does. Actually, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Thanks for everything. And know we all miss you, old friend. So, might be my birthday, but I say, here's to you. Now, tell us how you're doing.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to our mid-year conference to present the results of CD Projekt. This is a special moment. We're coming close to the 10th anniversary of publishing the first Witcher game. And so we've brought everything to a totally new level. We've completed the trilogy, and we're actually focusing on Gwent nowadays, but the foundation of our results continues to be Witch Hunter 3, which is a game that's not getting old. It's selling phenomenally well, and for all of those who would like to play Witch Hunter 3 for new consoles, we've prepared a 4K version, which will be available on PlayStation Pro in just a few days, and by the end of the year, it'll be available on Xbox One X. And so if I can go on to recap the H1 results, I would like to say a few things about the most important things. Piotr will speak after me about the numbers. The first thing is that we've paid out a dividend of 101 million zlotys. And so it's the first time that CD Projekt has shared profits with its shareholders. We've also kicked off GOG.com Galaxy 1.2. This is a big update, which contains a large number of functionalities, and some of them support Gwent. And so Galaxy is now fully published. It's gone past the beta. One of our strategic directions is to continue developing GOG Galaxy. We've organized the first professional tournament called Gwent Challenger. We're very elated with it. We were looking to see how it would work in an esporting environment. We've proven to ourselves that this is a good foundation for esporting events, and we're going to continue to explore this direction. We've opened up a representative office in Shanghai. It's a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary. Basically, this is a team of several persons. These are very experienced people, very talented people, and they will support our Chinese publisher in terms of Gwent, and this will also be linked to our future plans as we look forward to China. And then the most important thing, we've started the beta tests, the Gwent Witcher card game. This is a free-to-play game, and so you can download it and play this game. So let's take a look at a short clip that was dedicated to this specific event. So at the end, well, this is something that happened last week, not in H1, but we launched GWENT in China. We've completed our beta tests in China, and we're testing this video game in the same way, the way it's available in the West, along with micropayments. It's too early. It's premature to say anything particular about that. We've only had a few days behind us, but this is working. The video game is working, and China is a demanding market from a technical point of view. The unique factor is, or attribute is, that you can play with players from around the world. It's rarely the case that players from around the world can play with one another. And if we go on to the financial results, I'd like to ask Piotr Nilubowicz to take the floor. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you very cordially. It's my pleasure once again to share with you the financial results. And so in H1 2017, as a group, we've been able to generate top-line sales revenues in excess of $250 million, so 254.8 million. So this is a little bit lower type line than in the half-year periods, interim periods, when we had premieres of various video games. We had a very good result. So our EBIT is more than 143 million. This is more than we did in H2 2016, and it's more than we did in H2 2015. So if we look at these periods post premieres, we can see that we're generating better and better business results, and of course this transforms goes to the bottom line. We've got 118.6 million of net profit. This is better than we had in H2 2016, H2 2015. Only the interim periods when we've launched games as premieres, that's when we have better results. And if we look at our net profitability, we can say that 47% of our sales revenues, after covering all of our costs and taxes, we're able to retain 47% of those revenues as net profit for the use of our group. And so this is a very good result, better than in previous periods. So if we look at the balance sheet, we had two major changes in our assets. We look at the capital expenditures for development work, and so we have a shift of some 35 million. And so we can say this is linked to the two biggest projects, so Cyberpunk video game as well as the GWENT card game. The other change or shift in the balance sheet is in cash and term deposits, and you can see that the balance has edged downwards by 14 million. I'll tell you a little bit more about this when we get to cash flow. If we look at the equity and liabilities, we can see the biggest change was in equity. Our equity has moved up by 19 million. This is a result of the current year's financial results being higher than the dividend paid out in June of this year. And if we go and look at our cash flow, if we look at operating cash flow, it's 123 million, a little bit more than the net profit in this period. So within the framework of our investment activity, we spent some 33.4 million for capex to produce video games. And so under our investment activity, we also show you the effects of managing cash the group has. So we have term deposits that matured for roughly 380 million. At the same time, we set up new term deposits for nearly 500 million zlotys. And so basically, we have basically negative investing cash flow of 154 million as a result. And if we look at our financial activity, this is a direct result of the dividend we paid out of 101 million zlotys. This was a payout made in June of this year. So the overall net cash is negative 132 million. But we have to remember that at the same time, the total value of our term deposits in banks for 3 months and above as a result of our investing activity grew by 117.7 million zlotys. So if we look at the change in cash and our term deposits in excess of 3 months, this led to an overall change of a little bit more than 14 million. And so in order to simplify this and show you an illustration of the fundamental changes, the sort of bridge, and we can say this slide is the best graphic representation. So on 31 December 2016, we had the total cash balance and term deposits was 597 million. Over the last 6 months, we've spent 33 million for producing video games. We paid out 101 million as a dividend, and the other operations we've conducted have delivered 119.8 million in profits, and so our cash balance and term deposit balance at the end of June was 580 million. And so if we look at these results, and if we look at the positive cash flow, where this came from, well, the figures look like this in our income statement. We have to look at the two segments. We've got GOG.com as well as CD Projekt Red. And so if you look at the studio, CD Projekt Red, we generated 185 almost million sales revenues. That was our top line. And so some 30 million was from GWENT, and more than half is a result of what we're doing in GWENT, and GWENT is still undergoing tests. This is important to note. And so we're in the post-premiere stage. So we can say that our costs have fallen. So the costs of sales as well as operating expenses have trended down, and that means that our net result is 106 million. And so this result is only a 10-15% lower than what we had in H1 of last year. And at this, we can say that we have a net profit ratio in CD Projekt Red of 57%, which is a very attractive result. If we look at GOG, we can see that our sales top line has grown substantially to 96 million zlotys from 69. And the most important product in GOG in H1 of this year, looking at the top line, and the product that's responsible for the lion's share of sales growth is GWENT. And as a result, our costs have grown a little bit in H1 of this year, but sales grew faster than costs, and as a result, our net profit was 12.5 million zlotys. So this is more than double the level from H1 2016, and so this is the best interim period we've had in GOG. And so Adam will say a few more words about GOG, so I'd like to invite him to join us back up on stage. So as you can see, GOG is regularly growing, steadily growing. If these are the last 6 years broken down by interim periods, 6-month periods. And so you can see that our top line has grown steadily. And the bottom portion of the bar, the darker portion, this is the sales revenues. This represents sales revenues from the games we sell that are provided by other developers. We've got 2,100 video games that we're selling. We're going to continue to expand. That is an important portion of GOG, but the lighter portion of the bars, these are the sales revenues from our own games, proprietary games. And so in H1, we had the Witch Hunter 3 premiere, and so GOG Galaxy was the installer in the original version. And as a result of that, those persons who purchased the Witch Hunter in the box version could purchase editions using a single click directly from GOG, and this indubitably contributed to growing our share of sales in GOG. And so at present, we can say that we're tightening the cooperation between CD Projekt Red Studio and GOG, and the Galaxy is also the technological portion for the multiplayer portion, which serves, of course, GWENT. And of course, the players don't see that. GWENT is a card game, but there's a lot of technology underneath to make sure that people can play with one another, people from across the world, to make sure that it all works in real time for them to be able to communicate with one another. And so we will strive to ensure that Red and GOG do as much as possible, and we want for Galaxy to be implemented in our upcoming video games. And if we look at these bars, we should be aware that the lighter portion, 100% of the revenues stay within the group, but if we look at the darker portion of the bar, only 1/3 more or less of those revenues stay here in the group. The rest are royalties paid to our suppliers. And so exploring this cooperation between GOG and Red has a very important financial impact as we develop that kind of cooperation. And so if we look at the GOG Galaxy active users, so between the end of 2016, the end of H1 2017, we've seen some major incremental growth in the number of active users. This is because of GWENT. It's up some 65%. We opened that under beta test. So Red is supporting GOG, GOG is supporting Red, and we're going to continue running those operations. If we come on down to GWENT, I'd like to say a couple things about the newest updates. Well, the first thing is our esports strategy. So during the Gamescom exhibition in August, we announced the first professional season for esports. And so I'd like you to take a look at what our plan will entail.
Welcome to GWENT Masters, the official esports series for GWENT, the Witcher card game. The idea behind GWENT Masters is simple: to elevate competitive GWENT to a professional level and give gamers the opportunity to officially become the best GWENT players in the world. The starting point for GWENT Masters is the Pro Ladder. This is a brand new esports-oriented mode of competitive play separate from normal ranked play. Pro Ladder will be played in seasons, each one taking 2 months to complete. To remain competitive throughout the seasons, players will need to actively participate in the Pro Ladder, as well as constantly vary the factions and deck types they use. Every Pro Ladder season, players will be rewarded with crown points, accounting for their achievements during GWENT Masters and its events. Players will receive crown points for placing in the top 200 of the Pro Ladder at the end of each season, participating in official GWENT tournaments organized by CD Projekt Red, and placing in licensed GWENT tournaments not organized by CD Projekt Red. You will be able to check how many crown points you have at any time at masters.playgwent.com. There are 3 tiers of official GWENT tournaments. GWENT Open is the entry tier of tournaments, but it is by no means a walk in the park. There will be a total of 8 open tournaments during each GWENT Masters series. Only the top 8 players with the most crown points at the end of each Pro Ladder season will qualify to battle it out for fame, glory, and a piece of the $25,000 prize pool. The second tournament tier is GWENT Challenger. Each of the 4 Challenger events taking place every 2 Pro Ladder seasons will feature a total of 8 competitors. The winner of the previous Challenger, up to 4 finalists of 2 GWENT Open tournaments held prior to a Challenger event, up to 3 players with the most crown points accumulated over the course of the 2 seasons leading up to the Challenger, and 2 wildcard players invited to the tournament by CD Projekt Red. And there's a lot to compete for, as the prize pool for every GWENT Challenger will be $100,000, with the winner also claiming the Challenger winner's title and ring. The GWENT Masters series will conclude with GWENT World Masters, the final tier of official GWENT tournaments sporting a $250,000 prize pool. Most importantly, the event will determine who from the 8 competitors entering the battlefield will become the first ever GWENT World Champion. Participants will include up to 5 winners of previous Challenger events, and up to 7 players with the most crown points in the Pro Ladder accumulated over the seasons leading up to GWENT World Masters. Ready to become a GWENT Master? Visit masters.playgwent.com for the complete rule set, tournament dates, and more details regarding the format. Play GWENT now.
So as you can see, we're treating this quite seriously, and we're approaching esporting events in a very special and dedicated fashion. So people want to do this professionally, want to play professionally in GWENT. They're going to understand what awaits them, what their career path is, and so they can plan everything half year in advance. And so this morning at 9 a.m. everything was kicked off, so I'd invite you to play. And so the unique attribute of esport, of GWENT, is that players across the world are playing. So all of the games include everyone across the world, so everyone can play. And so the world master that will be selected will in fact be the true world master. Another thing that we've announced at Gamescom is the addition to GWENT, which is Thronebreaker, which we call the War of Blood in Polish. But let's take a short look at this clip.
Some tales are about witches and monstrosities. Some are about noble knights in shining armor. But not this one.
They've taken everything from me. Now, I will have it back.
So Thronebreaker is a major addition, and so this is a campaign for a single player. So it's created by the same team that created Witch Hunter 3. So I'm sure that this is going to be a fascinating tale. So Thronebreaker lasts at least 15 hours, as I know our team. I think there could be even more than 15 hours, and it's 15 hours of gaming, full of action, action-packed, lots of difficult choices to make. And so in terms of the tale as it plays out, we'll be dealing with similar stories that we saw in our large-scale Witch Hunter. And so we'll have 5 different distant countries where things will take place. So players will have 20 new unique cards, which can also be utilized in multiplayer formats. So people who like multiplayer formats will be incentivized to play also Thronebreaker. In addition, in Thronebreaker, we're going to have a large number of additional cards that will be specially designed in order to participate in battles that we've planned within this tale. And so this is just the beginning. So GWENT is at the beginning, early stages. So we focused on the testing of the game to ensure that it's fully balanced, that it's fair, and for it to be a good basis for esports. And so everything that's happening around this game, free-to-play, these things, most of these things still remain to be done. We're going to have a new mode for gaming. We're going to have new cards that will be rolled out. We'll have a new fraction. We also will have new leaders, new commanders in a new fraction, as well as in the fractions that already exist. On top of that, we're going to have various events, festivals within the game. The idea here is for gamers not only to come back to GWENT because they like to play it, but they're going to have additional reasons in order to return, revisit to GWENT to make sure that it continues to live, that it's going to live for a long time. That's in fact our plan. That's about it in terms of what we've prepared for you today, to show you today. So I'd like to invite you now to pose your questions as we open up for questions and answers. So I'll ask Piotr to join me on stage so we can respond to your questions. So we're looking for the first bold person who will dare to pose a question. The microphone's en route. I couldn't hear the question. You use a microphone. Cyberpunk is the bigger undertaking. Roughly 300 persons are working on Cyberpunk, where there's around 100 working on Witch Hunter. And so the relation is more or less, well, GWENT is an ongoing project. It's available. And so it's certainly not 3-to-1, but there's a little bit more for GWENT. But Cyber is a bigger project in terms of the team size, as well as the capex, or the expenditures that we're incurring for its preparation. I wanted to ask you whether or not in Q2, do you have any milestones from the Chinese partner? We're achieving our milestones. I'm not sure if your question is about tranches from the settlement in the contract. Yes, we've been executing or performing this contract on an ongoing basis. And so the agreement with Chinese partner has contributed to our H2 result. Well, we've recognized 30 million from GWENT, and so half of that comes from micropayments. So that's what the game itself has generated. It's a little bit more than half of the 30 million referenced here. What's the schedule in terms of your tranches from the Chinese partner? Will this be evenly spread over time, as was the case over the last 2 quarters, or should we anticipate that one of these tranches would be much bigger? Well, we can't tell you. We've got a contract signed under an NDA, so we can't really reveal that information. Just please wait for a moment. Let's wait for the microphone to make its way to you. Recently, information was reported that you have 700 employees, and the target number of employees was around 800. We're talking about developers. In the current situation, has your target goal and target headcount changed? Are you on target? Well, we're in line with the plans, but these numbers, that's not the most important thing from the point of view of our strategy. The most important thing is for us to develop GWENT, to make video games. The number of people working on our projects, well, we have the number of people that we need. We needed to quantify them to some extent as we announce our strategy. That's not some sort of fixed figure. Of course, we also have, office size, but our offices are growing. But let's not treat that 800 developers as a fixed target. Our recruitment is more or less on target. It's not something that's the easiest thing to do. It's always a challenge to recruit people. We're not encountering major problems. This is, normal business as usual, if I could say that. I wanted to ask, can we anticipate a dividend for this year? We're not going to say anything. We don't have a dividend policy. The most recent dividend we emphasized was a one-off event. We emphasized that we made that decision based on our status at that point. We're not thinking about the dividend. When we start to think about the dividend, then we'll communicate. Or if we think up something on that subject, then we'll communicate that to you. So there's no dividend on the horizon at present? No, we're not thinking about that right now. So we have a microphone on the other side of the room. I'm from Pico. I've got 2 small questions. One is about GWENT. One's a technical question about how you post revenues outside of micropayments. Were they posted in the development segment or in the GOG segment? And my other thing is about the single-player edition. Will it be for a fee, or is it going to be possible that you can buy utilizing the currency within a game? So maybe Michał can respond to the second question. If we look at all of our revenues linked to GWENT, which goes through the consortium, which is CD Projekt Red, as well as GOG Poland, So both revenues and in the same proportion our costs are presented in both segments in CD Projekt Red and GOG. Of course, Red has a bigger participation, bigger share, and it has a larger percentage of the consortium, and so it has a larger percentage of the revenues and costs. And the same is true of our partners, like the Chinese partners. So they're represented in the both segments, but there's a bigger preponderance in the Red. Well, Michal's in our management team as well. He's responsible for the business portion of Red as well as for GWENT. So I'll give him the floor. Welcome. So in terms of your question, we can't say too much because we've not communicated this information publicly. We're going to do things to make sure that this is viable in a business format and will be okay for players. I can't really say anything more than that at this time. Sorry. So I see that somebody over there would like to pose a question. Kasia, perhaps you could hand the microphone to this person. I would like to ask about the 3015. That's more or less the estimates in terms of the production of video games. So this should be increased by what we saw in the GOG segment. That's correct. Plus, we have the GOG segment participates in the sales of Witch Hunter at two levels. We've got two companies, GOG Ltd and GOG Poland. GOG Ltd is a store that also sales and handles all of our PC payments, and GOG Poland co-participates along with CD Projekt Red under the consortium as a creator. So within the segments, so we've got revenues both in the store as well as achieved by a partner participating in the consortium. And now it's as quiet as if we were to plant some poppy seeds. So, Carolina, I think somebody downstairs down below has a question. A question about GWENT. You can speak to this without numbers and dates, but if we look at the growth rate in the number of users, what are your KPIs in terms of retention or monetization, and based on what you've already announced in terms of these tournaments, GWENT tournaments, these challengers? I understand it's going to come to an end at the end of 2018. I understand that we're more or less 6 months before a hard launch. So we're going from a publicly open beta version to a hard launch. Is that right? We're not going to give you a foretaste of that. Well, the most important thing is already in place, that GWENT is available. And now we have to expand the game. If we look at the KPIs, we can't really say anything at all. What's worthwhile to mention here is that we have noted that every event, and the most important event up until now, was the public beta, leads to dramatic growth in all of our revenues from micropayments, and then it gradually subsides, and that's quite normal. That's the way things work. So the development of GWENT and revenues, it'll all be driven by events. That's why we're working on these events. The main reason is for our players to be happy, but on the business side, these events will be the major drivers of GWENT's development. When we talk about players in the public beta, you've not denied or confirmed with what's going to happen with those who've already paid money for these improvements. Well, we're not going to, rob anyone. So there are different methods. It's not going to be the case that somebody spent money and he's going to lose out because of that. Well, you'll get the equivalent value within the game if you've lost some sort of cards or something like to make sure that they have that equivalent value. If we look at the sales peaks, more activity of players takes place after these tournaments or these events, or is it promotions, or the users who remain? Are you pleased with how active they are in the game in terms of how active they are? As I'm describing this without imposing any sort of thoughts on that. We're happy if we have in mind how impoverished this game is. Well, you can play, that's the most important thing, but the game doesn't offer a lot. The game doesn't offer a lot of additional options, and that is what will make people want to come back to the game. So we're happy having in mind the stage of development of this specific game. If I could pose an additional question. So what is the proportion of games by PC, Xbox, and PlayStation in monetization? Do you have some? Is it comparable, or do you see that some platform is doing better? Well, we don't publish that type of information, but we're very elated with PlayStation's performance, and we can say that the game has done very well in Japan. So PlayStation is super, but we can't really say anything beyond that. One more question about GWENT. Do you plan to do some sort of publication sort of based on what the competitors have done? They sometimes publish how many millions of players have registered, that sort of stuff. Do you plan to do something like that in terms of marketing support? Well, those publications are rare. There are estimates done by third parties, but we haven't planned anything like that. If we change our decision, then we'll publish that information. Right now, we're focusing on developing the game. We don't intend to report internal data. So I'll pose a brief question. Cyberpunk, how's it going? Well. So that's your traditional response. It's going well. Well, we didn't say even a single word about Cyberpunk. We're working on that very intensively. A lot of people are working on that. Most of our developers are working on that. There'll be a moment in time when we'll be able to unveil what we've achieved, what we've accomplished. What about a mobile version of GWENT? Well, we haven't announced anything like that as of today. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any other questions you'd like to pose at this time? If not, then we would like to thank you very much once again, and we'll invite you to talk with us behind the scenes, off stage, as it were, behind